Shalom, shalom. Welcome back, family. I'm your host, Salvation to Israel, and welcome to the channel where we break down scriptures with clarity, precepts, and truth. If you're new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button and join the family. This is where edification meets defense of the gospel. All right. And make sure you turn that notification on so you don't miss any lessons, street teachings, rebuttals, come on, or deep dives into the word. So right now, let's get into it. All right. Shalom to everyone, Sister Tamika. I see you coming in. Shalom. Um, Today we're going to discuss something that's very much needed in these days and times. So if you get your pens, paper, and notebooks available to take down any notes to go back and review this information, I do encourage you to do so. Tonight we're going to talk about Esau. And this is a very much needed topic to discuss because so many do not go back and check to make sure what we're being taught is in line with Scripture. So, giving you the time to get your paper and your notebooks and everything available, we'll be back after this brief introduction. All praises be to the Most High. Tonight, we're going to discuss Esau. And as it is much talked about, it is widely proclaimed that Esau is the so called white man. Today, we're going to compare what we are being taught to the scriptures and see what scriptures have to say about that, because just as important as it is for us to know who we are in these last days and times, it is important for us to know who our enemy is and make sure that the precepts can let us know and keep us informed so that we'll be able to make the decisions that the Most High will have us to make in these last days and times. So allow me to just get my screen up here, and I'm going to give a brief introduction and we'll get right into it. Second. Okay. Have my screen up here on the board. But I wanted to start off by saying that many Israelites have been taught that Esau is the white man based on surface reading or European art. Okay. And many of it derives from a lot of camp teaching. Okay. So, what we're going to do is we're going to delve into scriptures and we're going to see if what we're being taught is in line with what the scriptures are saying. All right. I ask that you follow along with me as we delve precept upon precept. In this breakdown, what we're going to cover, we're going to allow the scriptures to define what the word manner is, what the word red means, and we're going to find what the term meat means when we look this up in the scripture. We're going to show specifically Esau's behavior and geography from the Bible and history, and we're going to separate Edom from Rome and Japheth. We're going to prove Esau's prophetic land is in the region of Sair, Teman, Dedan, and Saudi Arabia, not Europe or America. So what we'll do is we'll begin at Genesis chapter 25 and verse 23. Genesis chapter 25 and verse 23. Okay. And it reads, and the Most High said unto her, two nations are in thy womb, and two manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels, and the one people shall be stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger. In this verse, we see two nations, and it says, two manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels, and the one people shall be stronger than the other, and the elder shall serve the younger. So, what we want to do is when we go over here to dictionary and we look up the word manner, as you can see, I have the Merriam Webster, and manner basically is defined a way of behaving or conduct, okay? Is also characteristics or customs. Okay. So, two manners of people is dealing with behavioral, cultural, and spiritual differences, not skin color. So, when you hear people add black and white, but the text is talking about the way these two nations would act towards one another. Okay. So, people have made this a physical thing in its totality when we're talking about Esau. Okay. And oftentimes, when we get on this topic matter, people will accuse you of trying to save the enemy. And this is not what is happening. So, the next verse that we're going to look at as we go through this in the book of Genesis, chapter 25, we're going to look at verse 24. It says, and when her days to be delivered were fulfilled, behold, there were twins in her womb. So in this verse, twins share the same parents and the same general racial stock. The Bible is setting up two nations with two different spirits and behaviors. That's very important to remember. The scriptures are setting up two, come on, they're twins, and they're going to be two nations, as the scripture says, with two different spirits and behavioral differences, not two different races, one black and one white. Okay. Let's continue. Verse 25 says, Salakia, I'm going to read verse 25 again. It says, and the first came out red all over like a hairy garment, and his name was Esau. Okay, so when we look up this word Esau, see what this means. See what this means.
Strong's H 6215. Esav. Esav.
Okay. Esau. Now I got ahead of myself, family. Let me look up this word red also.
Strong's H 132. Admoni.
Low.
Admoni.
All right, family. Can everyone hear me okay? I'm getting some messages that my volume is a little low. If you can hear me okay, just type one in the comment section. All right. Now, it says, and the first came out red all over like a hairy garment, and they called his name Esau. Admoni equals red, ruddy. Okay. And this is in reference to Esau as an infant. Okay. This is H119. All right. As you can see on the screen. So we'll look at some additional precepts as we continue to move forward. We're going to go to the book of 1 Samuel, chapter 16 and verse 12. Look at 1 Samuel. In the book of 1 Samuel, chapter 16 and verse 12, it reads, "And he sent and brought him in. Now he was ruddy and withal of a beautiful countenance, and a good and goodly to look to. And the Most High said, Arise, anoint him, for this is he." Okay, so this is obviously talking about King David. When we look at another precept in the book of Lamentations, chapter verse 7 to 8, Salakia, Lamentations, chapter 4, verses 7 to 8. So we understand that King David was described as being ruddy. In Lamentations chapter 4, it says, "Her Nazarites were purer than snow. They were whiter than milk, and they were more ruddy in body than rubies. Their polishing was of sapphire." Okay, verse 8, "Their visage is blacker than a coal. They are not known in the streets. Their skin cleaveth to their bones. It is withered. It is become like a stick." So we definitely know that the Bible knows how to differentiate between ruddy and white. Okay, ruddy describes the complexion of Israelites, not Europeans. Let's continue. When we go back to the book of Genesis, chapter 25, we're going to pick up at verse 26. And it says, "After that came his brother out, and his hand took hold on Esau's heel, and his name was called Jacob. And Isaac was 80 years old when she bare him. She bare them, Salakia." All right. So this is going into the birth of Esau and Jacob. And people say Jacob's appearance is not mentioned because he looked like everyone else. But let's think this through with some simple logic. All right. If Esau was supposedly a so-called white man surrounded by so-called black people, he would only be able to reproduce through women of color. Without a population of white women to mate with after a few generations, all his descendants would blend back into the surrounding people. One pale child surrounded by dark people cannot alone produce a nation of so called white people. That doctrine collapses under basic reasoning and scripture. In verse 27, it says, "And the boys grew, and Esau was a cunning hunter, a man of the field, and Jacob was a plain man, dwelling in tents." So in this verse here, we see the term cunning hunter and plain man. And many people say, see, the white man is the only one that likes to hunt. Look at the nature channels. This or that is a stereotype. That's not scripture. Many nations hunt. The Bible is describing Esau's lifestyle and spirit. It's cunning, ambushing, violent. It's not talking about a race. When we go down to Genesis chapter 25 and verse 28, it says, "And Isaac loved Esau because he did eat of his venison, but Rebekah loved Jacob." So people claim Esau's venison was bloody meat or rare meat, food that is not done, as if that is what made Isaac love it. If that were true, Isaac would be guilty of eating unlawful blood. But Isaac loved the Most High and kept the laws. He is one of our main patriarchs and a righteous forefather. He would not be eating raw blood in violation of the dietary laws. Let's call some additional witnesses as we continue on this topic. When we go to the book of Genesis, chapter 26, we're going to look at verse 5. And it says this, it says, "Because that Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws." Now, Isaac was born to Abraham, and Isaac walked in the same righteous footsteps of his father. Okay, let's go back to Genesis chapter 25, and we're going to pick up at verse 29. It says, and Jacob sod pottage, and Esau came from the field, and he was faint. Right? Jacob is the one cooking this pottage, as we read. Verse 30 says, and Esau said to Jacob, feed me, I pray thee, with that same red pottage, for I am faint. Therefore was his name called Edom. So people say this red pottage was bloody meat, and Esau wanted to eat it. Who else likes to eat bloody meat? And then they go on to give you picture depictions or depictions, Salakia, of so-called Caucasian or white individuals eating raw meat or meat that's not fully cooked. And they say that Esau wanted to eat it before it was done, and they build a theory. The white man is the only one that likes to eat rare steak with blood in it. But the text is talking about Jacob's pottage, and we will see exactly what it is that he was cooking. Verse 31 says, and Jacob says, sell me this day thy birthright. Okay. Verse 32, and Esau said, behold, I am at the point to die. And what profit shall this birthright do to me? Right? Verse 33, and Jacob said, swear to me this day. And he sware unto him, and he sold his birthright unto Jacob. Verse 34, then Jacob gave Esau bread and pottage of lentils. And he did eat and drink and rose up and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. Right? So as we read down, it tells you exactly what Jacob was cooking, Salakia. It says Esau gave him bread and pottage of lentils. Okay? So the red pottage is explained plainly. All you have to do is go up here and type in red lentils. Okay. And then you will see the images that are displayed. As you can see, the different colorations. Red lentils. This is not talking about uncooked meat, okay, or rare meat. All right. So the pottage or the red pottage is explained as lentils. These just happen to be red. As you can see over here, they come in different colors. Okay. This particular pot of lentils was red. Okay. It was not steak. It was not bloody, but people twist the scripture and add meat that the Bible never mentioned. Let's continue. Let's go to the book of Hebrews. Hebrews chapter 12 and verse 16. Through thy precepts, we get understanding. It says, lest there be any fornicator or profane person, as Esau, for who for one morsel of meat sold his birthright. Right? Again, people, if you do not apply precepts and look at these verses carefully, it's easy for people to input their own interpretation on the scripture. And because this is written in English, people assume meat here means literal bloody steaks or burgers or meat as what we know it today. But the scriptures uses the word meat in different ways. When we go to the book of Genesis, chapter 1 and verse 28 to 29, it says, and the Most High blessed them, and the Most High said unto them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the fowl of the air and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. And the Most High said, behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed, which is upon the face of the earth, and every tree in the which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat. Here, meat refers to herbs and plants. We know that hamburgers as we know it and steaks, they don't grow on trees. So meat can be used to mean general food, not just animals or meat as we know it. Now, let's see when the scripture is speaking about meat as we understand it today. Let's see what the scriptures call it. In the book of Exodus, chapter 16 and verse 2, it says this. It says, "And the whole congregation of the children of Israel murmured against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness." Verse 3 is the point. "And the children of Israel said unto them, to the Most High, we had died by the hand of the Most High in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the flesh pots, and when we did eat bread to the full, for ye have brought us unto forth unto this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger." So in this verse here, it says, when we sat by the flesh pots, we did eat bread to the full. So when the Bible wants to emphasize meat as we know it, it uses the word flesh. Okay, that's very important. As we continue in Exodus chapter 16, we're going to drop down to verse 8. It says this, "And Moses said, This shall be when the Most High shall give you in the evening flesh to eat, and in the morning bread to the full. For that the Most High heareth your murmurings, which ye murmur against him." And what are we? Your murmurings are not against us, but against the Most High. Verse 12, "I have heard the murmurings of the children of Israel. Speak unto them, saying, At even ye shall eat flesh, and in the morning ye shall be filled with bread, and ye shall know that I am the Most High your power." Okay. So in the New Testament, let's see if we can find some witnesses in the New Testament in the book of Romans. Romans chapter 14 and verse 21. And it reads, "It is good neither to eat flesh, nor to drink wine, nor anything whereby thy brother stumbleth, or is offended, or is made weak." So when the scripture uses the word meat, it often it is often, speaking of food in general. When it want to emphasize what we call meat today, it calls it flesh. So therefore, when we look at the book of Hebrews chapter 12 and verse 16, all right, where it says this, it says, "Lest there be any fornicator or profane person as Esau, who for one morsel of meat sold his birthright." When we look at this verse, one morsel of meat, this does not prove Esau was eating bloody steak or that only so called white people eat rare meat. Another verse that people use to describe Esau is found in the book of Genesis, chapter 27, and they use verse 38. Genesis chapter 27, verse 38. It says, "And Esau said unto his father, Hast thou but one blessing, my father? Bless me, even me also, O my father." And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. Verse 39, "And Isaac his father answered and said unto him, Behold, thy dwelling shall be the fatness of the earth and of the dew of heaven from above." So many assume that this means Esau would rule the entire globe because they see the words fatness of the earth. But fatness of the earth can refer to a specific rich land mass, not necessarily world domination. Scriptures will identify exactly where Esau's territory is. Verse 40, "And by thy sword shalt thou live, and shalt serve thy brother. And it shall come to pass, when thou shalt have the dominion, that thou shalt break his yoke from off thy neck." So in this verse, Esau lives by the sword. And there are people on earth today whose cultures and legal systems are built upon the decapitation and bloodshed. And we will see who they are. All right. We're going to look at Jacob's blessing when we get to Genesis chapter 27 and verse 27. Watch this. It says, and he came near and kissed him, and he smelled the smell of his raiment and blessed him and said, see, the smell of my son is the smell of a field which the Most High hath blessed. Verse 28, therefore the Most High give thee of the dew of heaven and the fatness of the earth and plenty of corn and wine. So Jacob's blessing overlaps Esau in some wording, but Jacob receives the secure covenant inheritance, the corn, the wine, the land promise. Esau does not inherit the same covenant position. We'll provide some additional clarity as we move forward. When we go to the book of Genesis, chapter 36, we're going to read verses 8 and 9. Genesis chapter 36, verse 8 says, thus Esau dwelt in Mount Seir. Esau is Edom. So it's giving us the dwelling places and the location of where Esau dwelt. Okay. So these are the generations of Esau, the father of the Edomites in Mount Seir. Scripture locates Esau based in Mount Seir, not Europe. All right. So now we're going to deal with the sword and hunting behavior. And we're going to read about that. Let me see here. In the book of Jasher. All right. Let me see if I can pull this up. Because I need to get to chapter 27. And we're going to read verse 1. It says, and Esau at that time, after the death of Abraham, frequently went in the field to hunt. Right. Verse 2. And Nimrod, king of Babel, the same was Amraphel, also frequently went with his mighty men to hunt in the field and to walk about with his men in the cool of the day. Verse 3, and Nimrod was observing Esau all the days, for a jealousy was formed in the heart of Nimrod against Esau all the days. Verse 4, and a certain day Esau went in the field to hunt, and he found Nimrod walking in the wilderness with his two men. Verse 5, this is very important. It says, and all his mighty men and his people were with him in the wilderness, but they removed at a distance from him, and they went from him in different directions to hunt. And Esau concealed himself for Nimrod, and he lurked for him in the wilderness. So Esau concealed himself from Nimrod. He hid himself, right? And he lurked for him in the wilderness. Let's go back to KJV and look in the book of Joshua 15 and verse 52. In the book of Joshua 15 and 52, it says Arab and Duma and Eshin. All right. When we look this word here up in the Strong's, Arab,
Strong's H694. Arav.
Arab,
Arav.
Arab, it means ambush. Okay. To ambush, to lie in wait. And when we look at H693, which is
Strong's H693. Arav. Arav,
ambush, to lie in wait, ambush, lurk. This is what Esau was doing, to lie in wait, ambush. Okay, ambushers, to lay an ambush, right? You're concealing yourself, right? So the root word H693, we see that the concept of lying in wait, ambushing connects to this, Arab or Awab. All right. So we're going to go back to the book of Jasher, and we're going to look at verse 5 again. It says, and all his mighty men, talking about Nimrod, and his people were with him in the wilderness, but they were moved at a distance from him, and they went from him in different directions to hunt. And Esau concealed himself for Nimrod, and he lurked for him in the wilderness. Verse 6 says, and Nimrod and his men that were with him did not know him. And Nimrod and his men frequently walked about in the field at the cool of the day, and to know where his men were hunting in the field. Verse 7, and Nimrod and two of his men that were with him came to the place where they were, when Esau started suddenly from his lurking place and drew his sword and hastened and ran to Nimrod and cut off his head. That is, by the sword shall thy live in action. Revelation chapter 20 and verse 4. And it reads, and I saw the thrones. This is the last book of the Bible. And they that sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them. And I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Yahushai and for the word of the Most High, and which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither had received his mark upon their foreheads or in their hands. And they lived and reigned with Yahushai 1,000 years. Notice this is during the last days, right? They'll say that he has all these missiles and these mass weapons. No, we're going to find out who this is. It says, I saw thrones and they that sat upon them. He says, I saw the souls of them that were beheaded. It didn't say a missile hit and everyone blew up. No, beheaded. Okay, decapitated. Why? For the witness of Yahushai and for the word of the Most High, that did not worship the beast, neither his image, neither had received his mark upon their foreheads, meaning their doctrine, or in their hands, and they lived and reigned with the Hamashiach 1,000 years. Okay, so end time prophecy includes widespread beheading. How did the Romans execute? The Romans mainly use what's called crucifixion. But you have so many people teaching that Esau is the Romans and the Greeks. The Bible tells us plainly when we dig through the precepts. Now, what was King Herod? King Herod was an Edomite ruling under Roman authority. And this exposes the difference between the Romans, which are traced back to the lineage of Japheth, and Edomites. There is a false doctrine that the Romans and the Edomites are the same people. We're going to see. When we go to the book of Mark, chapter 6, and we're going to read verse 1. It says, and he went out from thence and came into his own country, and his disciples followed him. So this is talking about the Messiah. Now we're going to go down to 21, Salakia. It says, and when a convenient day was come, that Herod on his birthday made a supper to his lords, high captains, and chief estates of Galilee. 22. And when the daughter of the said Herodias came in and danced and pleased Herod and them that sat with him, the king said unto the damsel, ask of me whatsoever thou wilt, and I will give it to thee. Verse 23. And he sware unto her, whatsoever thou shalt ask of me, I will give it thee unto the half of my kingdom. Right? So these are Edomites operating under Roman rulership. King Herod was placed in the authority under Roman rulership. That's very important. Verse 24. And she went forth and said unto her mother, what shall I ask? And she said, the head of John the Baptist. So when we look at how the Romans unalived the Messiah, Yahushua, it was by crucifixion. They tortured you, right? But the Edomites, Herod's line or lineage, killed John the Baptist by beheading. Verse 25, it says, and she came in straightway with haste unto the king and asked, saying, I will that thou give me by and by in a charger the head of John the Baptist. You understand a charger is those silver dishes when you go to those fancy restaurants and they have your food under that silver charger and they lift the top off. That is a charger. It's not talking about a Dodge Charger. Come on, family. All right. So we see um, certain executing, when people execute, they have certain customs that they use. The Romans' customs for execution was different than the customs of the Edomites. Okay. Romans were brutal people that tortured you. They wanted to see you suffer and mock. And we saw that example of how they treated the Hamashiach. Verse 26, and the king was exceedingly sorry, yet for his oath's sake and for their sake, which sat with him, he would not reject her. Verse 27, and immediately the king sent an executioner and commanded his head to be brought. And he went and beheaded him in prison. And he went and beheaded him in prison, verse 28, and brought his head in a charger and gave it to the damsel, and the damsel gave it to the mother. And the damsel gave it to the mother. So the historical background when you're dealing with beheading with the sword or an axe is an ancient, cheap, and it's a practical form of execution. The Greeks and Romans considered it less dishonorable than other methods and used it particularly for their own citizens. Okay. It was widely used in Europe and Asia until the 20th century, but now is largely confined to Saudi Arabia and Iran. Both of these places are where? In the so called Middle East. In the book of Ezekiel chapter 25, we're going to look at verse 13. It says, therefore, thus saith the Most High Power, I will also stretch out my hand upon Edom, and will cut off man and beast from it, and I will make the desolate from Teman, and they of Dedan shall fall by the sword. Okay, so it says Teman and Dedan. They are locations in the region of Saudi Arabia. Scripture never says Esau's homeland was in Europe or North America or the Caucasus Mountains. Never. And all you got to do, I'm going to try to see if I can pull it up, is just type in T-Man and D-Dan. Let's see what comes up. Okay, you see Edom, you see T-Man and D-Man. We're going to look up images. Okay, you see D-Dan over here. Um, see here, you see Tima, D-Dan, Saudi Arabia. So the scriptures are giving us, and then you see Israel right up here. So the scriptures are giving us the actual locations of where Esau is. This is not the Caucasus Mountains. These are hot climate areas. Okay. I just wanted to pull this up. This is simple information. If we take the time to do the research and dig a little bit deeper, to study to show ourselves approved and not just repeat what it is that we are told, we have to go back and research this information out. So it gives us a location. It tells us that he will cut Esau, Edom off. And he said from T-Man and D-Dan. All right. In the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 2, we're going to continue this. Keep this ball rolling. Deuteronomy chapter 2. We're going to read verses 4 and 5. It says, and command thou the people, saying, ye are to pass through the coast of your brethren, the children of Esau, which dwell in Seir, and they shall be afraid. Okay? They should be afraid of you. Take ye good heed unto yourselves, therefore. Meddle not. This is the Most High speaking to the children of Israel. He says, meddle not with them, for I will not give you of their land. No, not so much as a foot breadth, because I have given Mount Seir, okay, unto Esau for a possession. So 1 second, let me pull up this image. Let me pause the screen for a second. Okay, family, I'm back. Now I'm gonna close this screen out here. And on the screen, you can see the children of Israel. This is the path that they took. And they're going down the king's highway. And they asked if they can go through Edom to get to the land. The Most High says, don't go through their land. Okay, so this is a map of the path that they took to travel to the promised land. Okay, so we're going to go back and we're going to look at the verse again. Okay, 1 second. All righty. So when we look at this verse, we're going to pay attention to the verbiage. It says, in verse 4, it says, and command thou the people, saying, ye are to pass through the coast of your brethren, the children of Esau, which dwell in Seir. That's the location. And they shall be afraid of you. Take ye good heed unto yourselves, therefore. So it tells us that the Edomites were afraid of the children of Israel. Okay, so the Most High speaks of Esau in Seir as a real defined land. In the book of Obadiah, chapter 1, we're going to be reading verses 1 to 3. Obadiah. It says, the vision of Obadiah, thus saith the Most High Power concerning Edom. We have heard a rumor from the Most High, and an ambassador is sent among the heathen. Arise ye, and let us rise up against her in battle. Verse 2, behold, I have made thee small among the heathen. Thou art greatly despised. Verse 3, the pride of thine heart hath deceived thee, thou that dwelleth in the clefts of the rock, whose habitation is high, that saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? So in this verse, Jacob is greatly despised and Esau is greatly despised. Esau dwells in the clefts of the rock, and some teach that this means the Caucasus Mountains, but the verse says nothing about Europe or the Caucasus Mountains. It is speaking of a rocky stronghold in his own region. Verse number 4. Though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, and though thou set thy nest among the stars, thence will I bring thee down, saith the Most High. So when people see this verse, they want you to hone in on certain key words. Though thy exalt thyself as an eagle and set thy nest among the stars. So people assume stars means, oh, who else went outer space or proclaimed to go outer space? And the first thing they said is the eagle has landed. So they give you man's logic to try to define what scriptures is saying, and they deviate from the method that the Most High has given us to understand scripture. So people assume that stars means outer space and rockets. They read it literally instead of using precepts. How are people living among physical stars? That's a human logic, not scripture logic. Okay? And if anyone tells you that that's what that means, ask them to give you a precept to where they got that understanding from. Give me a precept to where you got this understanding from. All right. What was Jacob's blessing? His blessing was the dew of the earth, corn and wine. Esau was jealous of this because he wanted that specific holy land. Esau felt like he was robbed of his birthright and he wanted that inheritance that Jacob got. So we're going to go to the book of Exodus chapter 3 and we're going to read verse 7 and 8. Exodus chapter 3 and verse 7. It says, and the Most High said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people which are in Egypt, and have heard their cry by reason of their taskmasters, for I know their sorrow. Verse 8, and I am come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of that land unto a good land and a large, unto a land flowing with milk and honey, into the place of the Canaanites and the Hittites and the Amorites and the Perizzites and the Hivites and the Jebusites. So the Most High promised to bring Israel into a good land, a large land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the land of Canaan. If Esau had not sold his birthright, that would have been his inheritance. This is very important to remember, family. That would have been his inheritance. This is why he was upset. This is the land that he actually desires and felt cheated out of. He was not concerned with the whole entire globe or the whole earth. He felt like Jacob cheated him out of his birthright. This is what Jacob got. Okay. So according to scripture, does Esau want the whole world or a specific holy region? This is how we got to read these verses. Let's look at Ezekiel 35 and verse 3. Watch this. Ezekiel chapter 35, and we're going to read verse 3. It says, and say unto it, thus saith the Most High Power, behold, O Mount Seir, I am against thee, and I will stretch out my hand against thee, and I will make thee most desolate. Okay, Mount Seir, we know, is talking about Esau, Edom. Now we're going to read verses 4 to 10. Listen to these verses carefully. I will lay thy cities waste, and thou shalt be desolate, and thou shalt know that I am the Most High Power. Because thou hast had a perpetual hatred, and hast shed the blood of the children of Israel by the force of the sword. In the time of their calamity, in the time that their iniquity had an end. Therefore, as I live, saith the Most High Power, I will prepare thee unto blood, and blood shall pursue thee. Sitteth, thou hast not hated blood, even blood shall pursue thee. Thus will I make Mount Seir most desolate, and cut off from it, from him that passes out, and him that returneth. And I will fill his mountains with his slain men in thy hills, and in thy valleys, and in all thy rivers shall they fall that were slain with the sword. Mount Seir, that's his mountain. And I will make thee perpetual desolations, and thy cities shall not return, and ye shall know that I am the Most High. because thou hast said, these two nations and these two countries shall be mine, and we will possess it, whereas the Most High was there. So this is what Esau said in his heart. He's not talking about the whole world. He says, these two nations and these two countries shall be mine, and we will possess it, whereas the Most High was there. So he knows that the Most High dwells Mount Zion, right? Mount Sinai. And he's trying to reclaim that birthright illegally. Those are the land territories that he desires to have. That is the fatness of the land. Okay, let's continue. Psalm 68:15. Psalm 68 and verse 15. And we're going to read down to verse 17. It says, the hill of the Most High is as the hill of Bashan, as high hill as the hill of Bashan. Why leap ye, ye high hills? This is the hill which the Most High desireth to dwell in. The Most High will dwell in it forever. The chariots of the Most High are 20,000, even thousands of angels. The Most High is among them, as in Sinai, in the holy place. Again, family, it's giving us locations. All you have to do is go over here, type in Bashan map. Bashan. Okay. Let me delete this here. So we can try to get a clearer image. And we're going to click on images. Let's see where Bashan is. Bashan. This is where the Most High said he dwells. Let me see here. Bashan, Sea of Galilee. It's telling us the location. This is what Esau wanted. Okay. Bashan. You got Edom right here at the bottom, right? Edom is Mount Sinai. Okay. These are the locations. Esau wanted these lands. This is what he's fighting for. This is what he's upset about. Let's continue. So we see where Sinai, when we read and study, we understand where Mount Sinai is located. Galatians chapter 4, verse 25. It says, for this Agar is Mount Sinai in Arabia, and answereth to Jerusalem, which now is, and is in bondage with her children. For this Hagar is Mount Sinai. Well, Hagar, huh? That's the slave woman in Mount Sinai, not the free, which is in Arabia. It's giving us locations. And it's also saying, and to Jerusalem, which now is, and is in bondage with her children. Her children, Jerusalem, those are the children of the free woman, not Hagar, okay? Or Agar. So Mount Sinai is in Arabia, a holy place where Israel received the commandments. Yet in the same land today, it is illegal to openly worship according to scripture and illegal to freely preach the Bible. So how does the Most High feel about his holy region being under heathen rule, forbidding his worship? And this is part of why judgment is written against Esau, Edom, and the surrounding nations. So when people say, thou shalt not abhor an Edomite and accuse brothers of teaching hate, they ignore the prophetic judgment. The Most High himself will destroy Edom for what they've done. Either you agree with the scriptures or you don't. So now what we're going to do is we're going to deal with the eagle. We're going to go back to the book of Obadiah, and we're going to read verses 3 and 4. We're going to deal with the eagle. It says, the pride of thine heart hath deceived thee, that thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock, whose habitation is high, that saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? Though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, and though thou set thy nest among the stars, thence will I bring thee down, saith the Most High. So when we're dealing with the eagle, as they like to point out, and they give you these um, man-made interpretations, we're going to look at Job chapter 39, and we're going to read 27 to 30. It says, doth the eagle mount up at thy command and make her nest on high? She dwelleth and abideth on the rock, upon the crag of the rock and the strong place. From thence she seeketh the prey, and her eyes behold afar off. Her young ones also suck up blood, and where the slain are, there is she. So the eagle dwells on high, watches from lofty place, and swoops down to ambush prey. This matches Esau ambushing warlike behavior. In Obadiah, we look at verse 4. Obadiah and verse 4. We look at this verse here. It says, though thou set thy nest among the stars. What is a nest to a bird? It's his home. Where is Esau trying to set his home? Among the stars. What do the stars represent? And this is why it's important to use precepts, because people have taught this is outer space, or so-called America trying to claim they went out of space. But is that what the scriptures say? What do the stars represent? Genesis chapter 37, and we're going to read verses 8 and 9. And it reads, and his brethren said unto him, shalt thou indeed reign over us? This is talking about Joseph. Or shalt thou indeed have dominion over us? And they hated him yet the more for his dreams and for his words. And he dreamed yet another dream and told it his brethren, and said, behold, I have dreamed a dream more, and behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obeisance to me. Joseph's dream shows the sun and the moon and the 11 stars represent his 11 brothers. His 11 brothers are the 11 stars, and Joseph himself is the 12th. The children of Israel are symbolically called stars. Excuse me. Let's look at Revelation chapter 12 and verse 1. It says, and there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. This represents the 12 tribes of Israel. So Esau setting his nest among the stars mean he vows to establish his seat among the tribes of Israel in their lands amidst their identity. This prophetic symbolic language, okay, that's what this is talking about. It's not talking about NASA or rockets, okay? This is not talking about rockets going in and out of space. So we're going to go back to the book of Obadiah. Obadiah chapter, well, it's only one chapter. We're going to look at verses 4 to 6. It says, though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, and though thou set thy nest among the stars, thence will I bring thee down, saith the Most High. If thieves come to thee, if robbers by night, how art thou cut off? Would they not have stolen till they had enough? If the grape gatherers came to thee, would they not leave some grapes? How are the things of Esau searched out? How are his hidden things sought up? So the whole world is looking in another direction, and they're blaming Japheth and Europe alone, while Esau hides in plain sight in the Middle Eastern region. camouflaging himself among Arabs and other nations. Let's go to the book of Jeremiah. We're going to look at Jeremiah chapter 49 and read verses 9 and 10. And it reads, "If grape gatherers came to thee, would they not leave some gleaning grapes? If thieves by night, they will destroy till they have enough. But I have made Esau bare, I have uncovered his secret places, and he shall not be able to hide himself. His seed is spoiled, and his brethren and his neighbors, and he is not." Okay, so in verse 9, this matches Obadiah about grape gatherers. In verse 10, it says his hidden places are uncovered. His secret places are in those same regions, T-Man and D-Dan. Esau will not be able to hide himself. The word Arab means mixed. So when we look up that word Arab, I believe it's only used one time. We read this earlier. And we see that when we look up this word, it means Arab. The word Arab means mixed. Esau mixed himself among those, blending and hiding. It also means to ambush. Hold on one second. And it's a city near Hebron. Okay. Esau mixed himself among these people, blending and hiding his identity while maintaining his hatred towards Israel. All right. So we're going to go back to Jeremiah 49 and read 10 and 11. I'll come back to this. I'll see if I think I went to the wrong place for my verse about Esau mixing his seed. We'll cover that though. Obadiah. We're going to read verses 6 and 7. It says, "How are the things of Esau searched out? How are his hidden things sought up?" Verse 7 says, "All the men of thy confederacy have brought thee, even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee and prevailed against thee. They that eat the bread have laid a wound under thee. There is none understanding in him." Okay. So all the men of thy confederacy, this is something that we read about in the book of Psalms. What does confederate means? It means alliance, league, compact, or coalition. So when we go to Psalms 83, and we'll just read verse 3. With thy precepts we get understanding. Verse 3 says, "They have taken crafty counsel against thy people and consulted against thy hidden ones." Verse 4, "They have said, Come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. For they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee." Who are these individuals? The tabernacles of Edom, the ringleader, and the Ishmaelites of Moab, and the Hagarenes, Gabal and Ammon and Amalek, the Philistines with the inhabitants of Tyre. Ashur also is joined with them. They have holpen the children of Lot, Selah. So when you look up these nations and places on a map, they are in the so-called Middle East. These are the people surrounding Israel's land, plotting against Israel from the beginning. Okay, these are the ones that took crafty counsel against the children of Israel. Ishmael did not get the covenant. Esau sold his birthright. Moab and Ammon were born of incest and were forbidden to enter into the congregation. Hamite nations like Tyre and Hagarenes had their lands taken and given to Israel, right? So let me just show you this. Let me see if I can show you this on a map. 1 second. For visual purposes. Okay. You see Ammon, Moab, Edom. You see Bashan, when we were talking about that earlier. Amorites. All these places are surrounding where the children of Israel were. Okay. These are the surrounding areas. Okay. Let's get back. Let's see here. Okay. Get my screen back up. Okay, so that is why these nations surrounding Israel hate the children of Israel. Every one of them circles the land. America and Europe are wicked and will be judged, but according to scripture, they are not Esau's original homeland. Again, these nations are wicked and will be destroyed. Their judgment is found in the books of Ezekiel chapter 38 and 39. They all despise the children of Israel as well, but they are not the so-called Edomites as most people teach. So when we go to verse 8 and 9, it says, Assure also, I'm sorry, let's go back. Let me go back to Obadiah. Let's go to Obadiah and read verse 8 and 9. It says, Shall I not in that day, saith the Most High, even destroy the wise men out of Edom and understanding out of out of the mount of Esau? And thy mighty men, O T-man, shall be dismayed, to the end that every one of the mount of Esau may be cut off by slaughter. So verse 9 again mentions T-man. This is a location. We must look at these places and look these places up instead of ignoring them and replacing them with America or Europe. The scripture already tells us where they are. Because Esau loves slaughter, he will be slaughtered. Some say this verse was already fulfilled, but many details in Obadiah and the prophets point towards or point forward to the end times. So when we look in the Apocrypha, in the book of Maccabees, First Maccabees chapter 5, and we're going to read verses 1 to 3. Okay? Because this is talking about the future. It's not talking about that particular time. Okay? It says, Now when the nations round about heard that the altar was built and the sanctuary renewed as before, it displeased them very much. Wherefore they sought, or they thought, Salakia, to destroy the generation of Jacob that was among them. And thereupon they began to slay and destroy the people. Then Judas fought against the children of Esau in Idumea at Arabatine, because they besieged Gael, and he gave them a great overthrow and abated their courage. So remember from Psalms 83, those surrounding nations fought Israel. And Judas Maccabees fought against the children of Esau, where in their own land, in Idumea, right? And he gave them a great overthrow. We're going to stay in First Maccabees. We're going to go to chapter 8. We're going to read verses 1. We're going to start at verse 1, I should say. I want you to pay attention to the wording carefully. It says, Now Judas had heard of the Romans, that they were a mighty and valiant men, and such as would lovingly accept all that joined themselves unto them, and make a league of amity with all that came unto them. So we have to make sure that we're listening with the intent to understand when people are presenting scriptures to us. You have to know when they're inserting their doctrine and when they're deviating from scripture. If Esau was the Romans, why are the Jews just hearing about the Romans here in chapter 8? Right? If Esau is the Romans, why did Judas Maccabees just conquer them in First Maccabees chapter 5, verses 1 through 3, when he slaughtered them in Idumea? How can Esau be the Romans when Judas Maccabees and his men just conquered and destroyed them? Okay? And why are the Jews just now hearing about the Romans here? Romans and Greeks are considered white nations, but this verse shows they are separated from Edom, who had already been in conflict with Israel earlier. We read about that in First Maccabees chapter 5. So the Romans cannot possibly be Esau, Edom. That goes against the prophecy, that goes against scripture. Verse 2. Verse 2 says, and that they were men of great valor. It was told him also of their wars and noble acts which they had done among the Galatians, and how they had conquered them and brought them under tribute. Scriptures don't say Esau did that. The Romans did this. Verse 3. And what they had done in the country of Spain for the winning of the mines of silver and gold, which is there. Verse 4. It says, in that by their policy and patience, they had conquered all the place, though it were for very far from them, and the kings also that came against them from the uttermost parts of the earth, till they had discomfited them and given them a great overthrow, so that the rest did give them tribute every year. The Romans are the conquerors, spreading their empire. Esau did not build that same empire. According to prophecy, Japheth is the one that is being enlarged. We'll read about that in the book of Genesis chapter 9 and verse 27. Japheth is the one being enlarged. Through thy precepts we get understanding. Genesis chapter 9 verse 27, it says, and the Most High shall enlarge Japheth. Who's going to enlarge Japheth? The Most High shall enlarge Japheth. And he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. So the Most High is going to enlarge Japheth, who shall dwell in the tents of Shem. Japheth's line spreads and occupies territories, which fits European expansion and Roman and Greek power. The so-called white man is Japheth, expands by taking other people's portions that fits Rome, Greece, and later European empires, not Esau's original land promise. We showed you on the map where Esau dwelt. This is why it's important to pay attention to those precepts. Now, we're going to see, as we go back to the book of Maccabees, their customs and their traditions. We left at verse 5, and we're going to go to we left off in verse 4. We're going to pick up at verse 5. It says, besides this, watch the customs that these people practice, these Europeans, or so-called white people. Besides this, how they discomfited in battle Philip and Persis, king of the Sittims, with others that lifted up themselves against them and had overcome them. How also Antiochus, the great king of Asia, that came against them in battle, having 120 elephants and horsemen and chariots and a very great army, was discomfited by them. And how they took him alive, and the covenant that he had, and such as reigned after him should pay a great tribute and give hostages, and that which was agreed upon. Verse 8. And the country of India and Media and Lydia, and of the land and of the goodliest countries, which they took of him and gave to King Eumenes. Moreover, how the Grecians had determined to come and destroy them. Now, people say that Esau was the Greek and the Romans. This is saying how the Greeks or the Grecians had determined to come and destroy them. And that they, having knowledge thereof, sent against them a certain captain, and fighting with them, slew many of them, and carried away captives their wives and their children and spoiled them and took possession of their lands and pulled down their strongholds and brought them to be their servants unto this day. Now, I want us to pay very close attention to this because there are people that say that Esau is the Greeks and the Romans. This verse, when we read in First Maccabees chapter 5, it was calling Esau Edom and Idumea. That's where Judas Maccabees defeated the children of Israel. When we get to First Maccabees chapter 8, and we're reading here in verse 10, 9 and 10, the Greeks came against the Romans and the Romans defeated them. How could that be Esau, family? How can Esau be the Greeks and the Romans? We have to make sure that we're paying attention to these clues. Let's continue. Verse 11, it was told him besides how they destroyed and brought under their dominion all other kingdoms and isles that at any time resisted them, but with their friends and such as relied upon them, they kept enmity, and that they had conquered kingdoms both far and nigh, insomuch as all that heard of their name were afraid of them. This ties directly into Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 49. Let's look at that real quick and we'll come back. Deuteronomy 28, 49, both near and far. It says, and the Most High shall bring a nation against thee from far, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flieth, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. Right? This is not talking about Esau. This is talking about Japheth's lineage. As we read here in First Maccabees, they had conquered kingdoms both far and nigh. Okay? And they welcomed anybody that wanted to be in a league with them. Now, pay attention to these next verses carefully. It says also that they would help to a kingdom, those reign, and whom again they would displace. Finally, they were greatly exalted. They are a world power. Verse 14. Yet for all of this, none of them wore a crown or was clothed in purple to be magnified thereby. See, they didn't operate like other nations. They didn't exalt the king. No one was crowned. They or to be magnified in purple. Okay, we're going to see their customs. Verse 15. Moreover, how they had made for themselves a senate house. We see this practice today, a senate house whereby or wherein 320 men sat in council daily, consulting always for the people to the end they might be well ordered or structured. So they had a senate house. We see that same thing happening today. We call it the president and the government. Okay, they had cabinets where they had people put in place. Okay, and they would do this, I think, every 2 years. Let me see, verse 16. Every year, and that they committed their government to one man every year, who ruled over all their country, and that all were obedient to that one. The same thing we see in today's government. We have what's called a president, not a king. Okay, not somebody arrayed in purple. Someone is put in position, and that there was neither envy nor emulation among them. These are the same practices we're seeing today. Their structure and their government sound just like the U.S. The Romans and the Greeks set that pattern. Meanwhile, in First Maccabees 5, as I mentioned earlier, I want to just put it on the screen so y'all can see this. In chapter 5 and verse 3, they were the Judas Maccabees was fighting against Esau. It says Esau in Idumea, and it says they fought the children of Esau. It don't say Esau was the Romans when we get to First Maccabees chapter 8. So how can Esau and his children be mentioned in chapter 5, but all of a sudden they're called Romans in chapter 8. How are they captured and become the captors? It doesn't make sense. That's man's logic. So the story that Romans equal Edomites equal white people equal Esau does not add up when you read Maccabees closely. And this aligns with the conclusion. The Romans, Japheth, they conquered Edom. They installed Edomite rulers like Herod over regions of Israel. Herod was an Edomite under Roman authority, not a Roman by blood. Therefore, Esau is not the white man. Esau is a Shemitic people rooted in the regions of Seir, Teman, and Dedan. In the Middle East, who later mixed with neighboring nations and hid himself, while European powers, Japheth, expanded globally through Rome, Greece, and their descendants. So, family, I want to thank you for listening in to part one. And we hope that this information found you in a place where this information made sense. Okay. And if you have not subscribed to the channel, you see it on the screen. Come and be a part of the family where we discuss things and topic specifics where you can take notes, watch it at your own pace. And when that notification bell rings, you'll be informed of when our next video has dropped. We hope you join us for part 2. And with that, I'm going to say Kwam Yasharala, peace and blessings be unto you. Shalom.